She's an Emerald Cup edibles judge, a mom, and a cannabis executive that wants to show the world how being all three of those can be combined into being the ultimate mom, the ultimate edibles judge, and the ultimate executive lifestyle. It is none other than the Mandy Tingler.
Good morning, everybody. Today, my story comes to us from the Telegram Journal, and it's really important. It's something that I've talked about before. It's happening all over the U.S. as different cities come online with their cannabis business operations. And it's the topic of community impact fees. For those of you who aren't really familiar, community impact fees are a fee that a lot of different cities decided to charge their cannabis businesses based upon the fact, or the assumption, I should say, not fact, that these businesses would negatively impact the community and therefore cost it money. So here we go. It says, after years of demanding cannabis businesses pay to open up in Massachusetts, with municipalities charging community impact fees that reached 3% gross yearly profits in anticipation of problems, the state legislature clarified the laws surrounding host community agreements. The clarification could see previously signed contracts between municipalities and businesses revisited, and the return of those fees. It was a new industry transitioning from illegal to legal in the state, a detail that prompted legislators to write certain safeguards into the laws regulating the cannabis industry in Massachusetts. Now those safeguards, host community agreements, and community impact fees are more of a hindrance than a help. They serve as a barrier to hopeful entrepreneurs seeking entrance into the marketplace and have cost the state's first wave of cannabis business operators millions of dollars that could find a way back into their businesses. Roughly 450 retail marijuana licenses are issued in Massachusetts, with retail sales up around $4 billion. The state taxes these businesses at 20%. They are also subject to the standard 6.25% sales tax, excise tax, and, until the revision, the 3% gross annual revenue charged as a community impact fee. The review of the regulations undertaken last year by the state legislature, coupled with a number of reports highlighting inequities in the HCA and CIF system, prompted a, quote, clarification and generated a measure voted into law last November. This September, a public hearing on the proposed regulations is scheduled at the headquarters in Worcester Union Station. The working group at the CCC charged with implementing the clarifications has said that the reviews of the agreements during license renewals would not look at past payments, fee agreements that are no longer in fee agreements that are no longer in effect at the time of renewal. It also indicated that municipalities would not be required to refund past payments prior to the change in legislation. However, the question of whether the clarification would be retroactive is still very much open. At its July 13th meeting, the CCC indicated that past HCAs will not necessarily be grandfathered in. It was a brand new industry, said Representative Dan Donahue, a Democrat chair of the Joint Committee on Cannabis Policy, explaining the inclusion of the HCAs and the community impact fees into the original legislation. It was an industry coming from illegal to legal in the state. How could we predict the impact of marijuana businesses in the community? The host agreements and the fees were written into the laws as a way to offer a safety value to municipalities, a way for them to alleviate any potential harm the businesses may have caused. Those impact fees were always required to be reasonably related to the harm caused by the businesses. Now the state will enforce that provision. Under the clarification, municipalities are required to account for the use of these fees and the harms mitigated to the businesses and the states when a license comes up for renewal. Fees cannot be folded into the general fund and used for other purposes such as street paving, new sidewalks, and police or fire apparatuses unless the improvement is directly related to the businesses. Since the beginning, municipalities were authorized to charge up to a 3% a year for business annual gross revenues as the impact fee. Yet they've demanded the full 3% as the base community impact fee. In many communities, the projected revenue funneled about $1 million a year into the municipal coffers. Municipalities have also accepted other perks offered by the entrepreneurs who were ready to promise the moon, sun, and stars in their eagerness to secure a license to operate in specific communities. One of the really interesting things that's coming out of this, you guys, is the fact that there's a talk about returning these fees to the business operators. It says deep pockets needed by these applicants. An applicant named Fallon noted that the lengthy application process, the cost of securing and holding an appropriate property, coupled with the fees charged by municipalities, is detrimental to those entrepreneurs she called mom and pop and social equity applicants. They succeed in keeping out the little guy, Fallon said. The HCAs and impact fees served as a barrier to social equity applicants. Municipalities looked at the cannabis industry as a blank check, said Blake Messing, founder and chief counsel of the Messing Group, a Massachusetts firm that specializes in cannabis law, permitting compliance, and promoting the industry. But the jig is up, he says. In his estimation, this review of the community impact fee and the host agreement should be retroactive. Failure to review and revise the impact fees and agreements could lead to a separate form of litigation on the part of cannabis businesses. Adam Fine, a partner at Vicente LLP, a firm specializing in cannabis law, also agrees. This was an exploitation of the law, he says, and regarding the full 3% gross revenue annual community impact fee. Of the states that have legalized marijuana, Massachusetts is the only one to require the HCA. Inherently unfair, the HCA titled the odds in favor of the applicants with deep pockets. All three attorneys indicated that they had advised their clients on occasion not to sign these predatory HCAs. But they needed to get a host community agreement order in place, Fine said. Some cannabis businesses have already filed a suit. Boston city officials indicated last fall that they would stop collecting these impact fees and return $2.86 million to its cannabis businesses. We're already seeing other communities follow suit, Donahue said. Northampton, for example, the mayor said that there was no negative impact to the community. He believes that if a municipality cannot account for the spending of the funds, it will be required to return the money. Donahue had no explanation as to why the commission did or did not have the authority to review or regulate host community agreements and voted in 2018 to remove itself from the process. Because I mentioned that this is happening all over the place. These community agreements and fees are really predatory. They're very dangerous, especially when there's just no rhyme or reason or accountability to them. Do any of you know of any other cities that are calling for reviews like this? Personally, I think if your community has this written into your license, you all should. Curious to see what my fellow correspondents say. This is Carmen Sacramento coming at you live for High at 9 News.